Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Derbyshire Dales series. The Dales contain some of the most beautiful British scenery. It's a magnificent area. Here's one of its 109 civil parishes. Welcome back to the Derbyshire Dales, everyone. I've got my entire entourage with me again. Nikki, Hannah and Lauren are all with me as we explore a village which probably knows the word, or words should I say, self-isolation a little bit more than the rest of us do. We're all familiar with that term thanks to the COVID pandemic. Well, here in this part of Derbyshire, they've been doing that for a long time. Back in the 1600s, the plague was prevalent in this part of the world. Welcome to Eyam. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Now, when most of us hear the term self-isolation these days, we instantly think back to those dark days a couple of years ago when the COVID-19 pandemic forced the whole world into lockdown. That seemed pretty scary stuff, but it wasn't a patch on what happened here in the 1660s. This is Eyam, where self-isolation was a choice made by the villagers due to the prevalence of the plague. The entire community shut itself off from the outside world in order to prevent the spread of the deadly infection elsewhere. Eyam is widely known therefore as the Plague Village. Here you'll find a lot of graves of those who succumbed to the disease, but they're not in the local churchyard. There are at least 3 plots where plague victims were buried, and there could well be more that are unknown. Without question, Eyam's plague history is what drives the local economy. Tourism is what the village relies upon to survive, but it's a place that once had some thriving industries too. Lead mining, quarrying and even silk production were commonplace throughout, but it was also important for the production of fluorspar. Eyam also has some other landmarks of note like the impressive Eyam Hall, the Church of St Lawrence and even a sheep roasting spit. We'll talk some more in this episode about all of those things, but of course the plague history will dominate our time here. Let's get walking and see if we can avoid the dreaded lurgy. How much was that?
Probably a penny.
We begin to the north of the village at Mompesson's Well. This is named after William Mompesson, who you might remember from the Quarrying episode in Newark and Sherwood. He was Eyam's rector, and together with Puritan minister Thomas Stanley, he introduced a number of ways to help stop the spread of the disease. One way was to create holes filled with vinegar, where coins could be left in exchange for supplies from the surrounding villages. This idea reduced the risk of the disease, leaving Eyam, as the vinegar in the holes disinfected the coins. There were at least 2 holes which fulfilled this purpose, and they were drilled into boundary stones. They were purposely sited as far away from the village as possible. This one is on a hill, high above the village on a road called the Edge. I honestly can't recall anything like this happening during the recent COVID-19 pandemic. It seems, back in the 1660s, these guys had the right idea. Okay, so after a drive down from the well, and we've cracked no end of well jokes, haven't we?
Well,
on the way
yeah.
down, which are kind of, you don't want to hear them, trust me. We find ourselves in Eyam village, and we're at the eastern end of the village. We're going to walk around this place, and then to finish, we're going to drive up to the Riley graves. Hopefully, there is a closed road here at the moment, so we may end up not doing that, but there are other graves around here, which are very interesting as well, and you're going to have your camera out, aren't you, for a few of those?
I reckon.
Cool.
I don't see why not.
So let's go and explore Eyam then, shall we? All around the village you'll find green signs splashed on virtually every building. They help tell Eyam's plague story, but some are just general history. This one is on the former Wesleyan Reform Chapel, built in 1787, long after the plague had disappeared. It tells us John Wesley also preached at Grindleford in 1768. Under it, though, is a fact relating to Thomas Stanley. He helped the sick and wrote a number of wills for the victims. He died in 1670, and he's buried in Eyam. The plague ran its course over 14 months during 1665 and 1666. One account states that it killed at least 260 villagers, with only 83 surviving out of a population of 350. A lot of the victims were buried by their own families, and as such there are many plots around the village where they now lay. Miners' Arms Croft is one of these. It's a small patch to the rear of the village pub. There are no headstones here now, but it's believed 4 members of the Heald family rest within. Okay, so now we know there's a lot of people buried here thanks to the plague, and now we're actually going to see some of those graves. So I hope you've got your camera out, Nikki. Is it in there? It is. Brilliant. We're heading for the Lydgate graves. Whilst Miners' Arms Croft may not have any headstones, the Lydgate graves definitely do. There are only 2 burials here, and they are those of George Darby and his daughter Mary. Both would perish thanks to the disease in 1666. George's wife was one of the lucky ones to survive the plague, but died shortly afterwards in 1674. You might be asking yourself why victims were not buried in the churchyard. Well, the answer is that the churchyard was banned for burials during the plague. Families instead had to bury their own dead, which must have been the most distressing thing, unheard of in today's modern society. A bit further down Lydgate you'll come to Lydgate House, formerly known as Rose and Fossil Cottage. This was the home of Eyam historian and poet William Wood during the 1800s. It's obviously not plague related, and neither is this, the old red phone box, which is almost opposite. I reckon it's time to talk about something else now for a while. Okay, so once out of Lydgate you're onto the village square. Hannah's already provided both of these village notice boards with a TVI card, so you can mark them off. This one's got a nice map of the village. I can show you kind of where we're going. So the village square is just there where Nikki's finger is, and we're going to head sort of this kind of way and come around all of this sort of stuff, and then sort of make a loop back here. It's kind of weird, this route, but trust me, you'll get the idea. It'll catch all the main stuff. And yeah, are you ready for a long walk, missus?
Let's crack on.
Let's crack on. I see you got your aviators on.
Well, not aviators, these are some of, can I say the opticians?
Possibly.
Optical Express's finest, you know, sunglass subscription sunnies.
Yeah, well it is a nice sunny day at least, isn't it?
Just go.
We're now on Church Street, and in front of us here is Eyam's Primary School. This was built in 1871, and by 1887 it was teaching some 118 pupils. It became the present primary school in 1958 after the opening of Hope Valley College, and it's still going strong today. It's one of a number of amenities that are laid out along Church Street. Another of these is right next door. This is Eyam Surgery, which has a branch site in neighbouring Bradwell. Eyam Surgery also utilises the village hall at Lytton for half an hour a week. Now, speaking of village halls, as we make our way up Church Street, lined with some pretty stone cottages, typical of this part of Derbyshire by the way, we're heading towards what Eyam would class as its own. That would be the Mechanics Institute, built in 1859. The Mechanics' Institute is the focal point for a whole range of local village activities, and it has an upstairs bar and lounge, which is open 6 days a week from 7:30 p.m. Okay, that brings us to the church, which is right behind me, looking very resplendent in the sunshine. Nikki has already gone off to explore the churchyard because I'm pretty sure there'll be a few plague graves in here. Meanwhile, I'm going to head up to the church itself and see what we can capture about this. Eyam Church is dedicated to St Lawrence. It dates back to the 13th century, though the presence of a late Saxon font here suggests that there was a much earlier church on the same site. It was locked, but if it had been open, I would have been able to show you its magnificent plague window, which I've included a picture of here. Set onto the south wall of the chancel is an intriguing sundial. Dating from 1775, this is inscribed with signs of the zodiac and pointers to locations like Mecca, Tenerife and Quebec. In the churchyard stands a striking 8th century cross, which originally stood at Cross Low, west of Eyam. It was originally as much as 10 feet tall, but it's lost a section of its cross shaft. It's the only Saxon cross in the Midlands that retains its crosshead. Close by is the tomb of Catherine Mompesson, William Mompesson's wife. Another notable grave here is that of former cricket umpire Harry Bagshaw, who died in 1927. It's known as the Cricketer's Grave. So this is quite an extensive churchyard and cemetery. It definitely needs cutting back in places. As you can see, it's very overgrown just here. Now those three have wandered off into the depths of this churchyard. I'm sure they've caught plenty more than what I have. So let's go and catch up with them and see what they found.
Okay, so I think probably Andy might be nabbing this footage for his video. So we have here Brian Robert, Lord Morris of Castle Morris, 1930 to 2001, and his wife Sandra Mary, 1929 to 2018. Hannah spotted that one, so well done, Hannah. So looks like we have a lord in amongst the graves here. I haven't even seen who this church is dedicated to yet. I shall definitely be having to take a look at that. So sadly the church is not open, but no matter, there's still plenty to see in this village. So let's go and see if we can find any more graves, any more communal graves, and any signs that look quite interesting as well, and see what we can bring for you.
Upon leaving the churchyard, you're then back into an area laced with plague-related history and many more houses that bear those imposing green signs. Here's one. This one tells us about the Hawksworth family. Peter Hawksworth was the third victim of the disease, whilst Jane was the sole survivor in the family, losing 25 relatives in total. It's a similar story at Bagshaw House over the way, where the plague claimed the lives of 10 members of the Siddle family. Now this next thing took us all by surprise. Not plague related, this is actually something else Eyam is widely famed for. It's a traditional sheep roasting spit. Since 1951, people have been coming to Eyam in their thousands during something known as Carnival Week to witness the annual sheep roast. It's become something of a local tradition. I mean, this is Derbyshire after all, and these things do tend to be kept alive pretty well out here. I'd love to see this. Sheep roast. I've never seen one of those things before. Apparently the day that it happens is September the 2nd, but we're busy on that day, so we won't be able to come and actually see it in full flight. But you know, that's the date. Remember the date to come and see the sheep roast. We've now reached...
I don't know why you just walked in front of me there.
To be fair, you walked behind me. Anyway, we've now reached another small little green. I'll turn the camera, you'll be able to see said green. There it is right there. And on the green there's a set of stocks.
Yeah, we've got 2 kids, there's 4 holes.
Are you tempted?
Very.
I'm very tempted.
I'm mentally friendly.
This house is Eyam's most unusual. It's the only one in the village that's made of brick. The rest, as you've seen so far, is of local stone. It used to be a pub. On the green we find those stocks. These were erected for the punishment of minor offenders by the Barmote Court, which still sits each spring at the Mechanics Institute. This green was known historically as the marketplace, and this was the market hall where local goods would have been sold. This has been recently restored. It all stands opposite the 17th century Eyam Hall. Eyam Hall is an exceptional place and it's open to the public. It boasts 8 local artists and artisans with working craft and gift shops, plus a pleasant cafe inside a cobbled courtyard. It was built as a manor house in the Jacobean style and was owned by the Wright family, the very same who we spoke about in the Longston episodes. The hall began its life as a generous wedding present in 1671 for John Wright and his new wife Elizabeth. So this has fascinated our Hannah, who's a bit of a bus nerd. Apparently you can get to Meadow Hall in Sheffield from here, thanks to the local bus services. Now apparently there are 2 services. You've got the 65, which is the one that goes to Meadow Hall via Grindleford and Ecclesall and through Sheffield. And then you've got the 66, which goes to Chesterfield via Brampton, Ashgate Hospice and Baslow. So there you go. You can get to some places from Eyam. Brilliant. Eyam has a few former pubs. This is one of them, Crown Cottage. This was formerly the Rose and Crown Inn, but it's now a holiday cottage. Directly opposite this is Eyam Post Office, although this is more than just your bog standard Royal Mail branch. It's also a gift shop and a very interesting craft workshop. So, no surprise, Nikki was straight over the road to have a look. They sell all kinds of handcrafted goods, some of which you can see here in the window. Moving on, we then pass Laburnum Cottage. Part of this house is the oldest occupied property in Eyam, although its signboard doesn't give a date. The road then starts to climb up a hill as we come to a shop. Again, there's some more handcrafted gifts on sale here, even though Lauren's head is in the way. The shop in question is the Eyam Country Store, which stocks fresh fruit and veg, milk, eggs and bread, and also supplies fruit and veg box deliveries locally. So I've left the others at the shop for a while I go and explore Town Head, which is a road that runs out to the west of Eyam and eventually up a hill. I'm starting this section outside Little Edge House, which is this building right here. Let's check this area out. Little Edge House was another former pub. It was originally the Heart of Oak, which was named after an English seaman. It was rebuilt in 1660 and renamed the Royal Oak Inn. Heading west, here's Richard Furness's house. Born here in 1791, he was known as the Poet of Eyam, and his grave can be found in the churchyard. Over the way is West End Cottage. Built in 1553, this was the home of the Wilson family, 9 of whom were victims to the plague. Let's now go up Town Head, which gives us a chance to talk local industry. This here is Town Head Factory. It was built in 1735 as a silk weaving mill. Silk weaving was a major local business at one time. Ralph Wayne, who worked here, discovered how to produce a pattern on both sides of silk materials. A quirky little feature of this is a pigeon loft, from which carrier pigeons were sent with messages to the silk mills in Macclesfield, an area arguably more famous for the commodity. And once you get beyond the Town Head factory, the road starts to run uphill and out of Eyam into the surrounding countryside. I'm now going to make my way back down this hill and reconvene with the others, and we're off to see the Eyam Museum. This is Hawk Hill Road, but these are the Hall Hill Troughs. They're water troughs which are named after the derelict Bradshaw Hall, which is behind Eyam Museum. One of the go-to tourist locations in the village, Eyam Museum was created by people from the village, and it tells the story of the plague far, far better than I, a mere visitor, ever could. The museum was inspired by the life and work of Clarence Daniel, a lifelong resident of Eyam who collected local fossils, minerals, archaeological material and documents related to the village and its history. He displayed them in his own house, and on his death in 1987, it was decided that his collection should form the basis of this very museum. It delves into how the plague even started here too, thanks to a flea-infested bundle of cloth which came from London. The museum opened in 1994 and it receives more than 30,000 visitors a year. It even has a free car park for cars and coaches and a block of public toilets opposite. So the Eyam Museum opens at 10 if you're interested in coming to see the history of the place.
It's Tuesday to Sunday.
Oh, it's Tuesday to Sunday? Well, it's Saturday today.
I know.
It's a Saturday, so, you know, Saturday, 10 o'clock, that's the place to be in this village. Nikki's quite comfortable on this wall apparently, aren't you?
No, I'm quite happy on this wall, yeah. I could sit here, it's a nice shady spot. I could sit and watch the world go by.
Watch the buses come into the car park.
Come into the car park.
Well, the girls have gone off to a park, which is where we're heading now. You might just be able to see to the left of the shot there's a path which runs along the back of this car park. That goes to the park. Let's go and catch up with them. This next area is very sports and leisure orientated. This is Hawk Hill Road Sports Field, which is the base of the local cricket club. Eyam has its very own BMX style pump track up here too. This was built on what was formerly an overgrown patch of waste ground, which was something of an eyesore. It looks good now. Eyam is well served when it comes to playground facilities. The girls wasted no time in trying out all of the equipment you can see in your shot now. Notice there's also a pair of floodlit tennis courts here, as well as a football pitch. This is used by Eyam Football Club, members of the Hope Valley League. After this, we follow a path which runs all the way back into the village square once again via a side street called Glebe Park. Now, I wasn't to know at the time, but Glebe Park is where you can find a sculpture garden which hosts a collection of works from various local artists. It's run by Hannah Bennett and her website is linked below. Alright, there's just one section left and it's heading back into the village square where this walk will end at one of the little tea rooms and cafes that you can find in there. It's been a beautiful walk, been a beautiful morning. I've enjoyed this thoroughly, so let's end this in style, shall we? So all that's left now is the village square, but there's plenty around this. As well as Eyam Country Store, which we saw earlier, the village has a second shop, Church Street Stores. This is the Village Green Cafe, which has been here since 2012. Cyclists who attempt the infamous Winnets Pass nearby can get a free slice of cake here, so says their website. Behind the cafe is another former pub. This was the Forester's Arms, which is built over the site of a graveyard which contains some more plague victims. All these former pubs, isn't it time we had an open one? Yes it is. This is the Miners' Arms, so named thanks to Eyam's history of lead mining. I'll cover that shortly. This inn was built 35 years before the plague and was the scene in 1684 of a notorious wedding between Rector Joseph Hunt and the landlord's daughter Anne Ferns. Our last stop is another little cafe. Welcome to Eyam Tea Rooms, who were very happy to learn I was making this video. Hello guys, I hope you're well. And so we made the Eyam Tea Rooms our last stop. I'm currently devouring a Bakewell tart, typical because I'm in that right part of Derbyshire, aren't I? And an ice cream milkshake. Cheers everybody. Nice place this, really nice place. I'd definitely recommend it. As well as silk weaving, Eyam was industrially important for several other reasons. Lead mining and limestone quarrying were the major source of local employment, the former being responsible for Eyam's early prosperity. It reached its peak in 1717 following the discovery of a rich vein at Hucklow Edge, while some limestone quarrying still continues in nearby Middleton Dale. The lead mining industry in the area was almost defunct by the late 19th century, but glebe mine continued working until the 1960s. The last mine to close was Ladywash Mine, which is close to Mompesson's well. Now, a byproduct of lead mining is fluorspar, and Eyam became important for its production because it was used as a flux in tin smelting. Cart horses would transport it to stations at nearby Grindleford and Hassop. Okay, so if you come out of Eyam towards the east, you come up a hill and you get this fabulous view of the Dales. Would you just look at this? This is beautiful. You can see for miles up here. It's absolutely fantastic. But this view is not the reason why we're here. Don't get me wrong. It's worth coming up here just for this view. But I've come up here, and so has Nikki, to see the Riley graves in this enclosure in a field. Our last landmark comes in the form of the Riley Graves, a stone enclosure set within a field off Riley Lane. There are at least 6 burials here, all plague victims and all from the same family. That family would be the Hancocks. Here lie Alice, Anne, William, Ona, Elizabeth and John, who all died within days of each other in August 1666. The 6 graves, according to records, are believed to all be children aged between 3 and 15. Their mother, also an Elizabeth, survived the plague, and legend says she left the village to go to live in Sheffield with a surviving son. It would be his son, Joseph Hancock, who in 1750 discovered the art of plating goods, known as Sheffield plate. Now, before we leave Eyam behind, let's enjoy that view that the Hancocks have got up here. It's magnificent. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.